Couple of months ago, my colleague with whom we are currently working on our wonderful project brought an email that I can have speech at TEDx. She wrote it with such an aspiration, as if she had bought me my bicycle from my childhood, which I sometimes see in my dreams. I felt ashamed. I didn't know at all what TEDx was. So I got on the internet and began to listen to speakers. After watching the seventh speaker, I realized the most important thing. They all were speaking English. At that moment, not only did I not know what TEDx was, but I didn't speak English. And I realized to learn it. I was recommended one wonderful tutor who turned out to be physicist mathematician and began to teach me all sorts of formulas and schemes. Unfortunately, my English here is finished. I will continue another language which is more comfortable for me. Sorry. Так вот, мой трехколесный велосипед.
So, my tricycle. 25 years after graduation, we got together with our classmates. One of them recalled how I used to mount my dark blue horse with a beautiful white mark on its forehead, delightful as the whole world, and gallop over our mountain bumps, full of flowers of amazing beauty. These exact mountain bumps here. And, of course, a big, shaggy dog was following us. When she was telling this, all my classmates dreamily nodded. They all, without exception, admitted how they used to envy my childhood. They reminded me how they could not wait for breaks at school to get together and listen to my stories. It's true that there was a horse, but it was a wooden horse with a stick that I would ride in our small apartment. When my current non-dreaming soul forced me to tell my classmates the truth, it felt like I stole their childhood. In one of my stories, I wrote that during a person's lifetime, several souls are infused into him one after another, unlike what some religions teach us as if a soul lives in several bodies. How else can one explain the fact that as we grow up, we erase our childhood joys from our memory with which we could amuse ourselves until we were interrupted by those very adults from our childhood? Remember them, those adults? Do they remind you of anyone now? I would like to ask those who played with small houses in their childhood to raise their hands. And which of you was pulled out of there by force from the legs? In childhood, we fenced off small cozy houses from the huge and uncomfortable ones. In order to at least approximately understand what aromas and tastes, melodies and colors form the emotions of our children. It would be nice for us to try to knock on our childhood doors.
Мечты наших детей, нам бы неплохо самим постучаться, иногда стучаться в наше детство. Винни Масс,
Weenie Mass, the co-founder of the Architectural Bureau MVRDV, in my opinion, is more of a philosopher than an
на
architect.
мой взгляд, больше философ, чем архитектор. По его проекту
The school, where he once studied, was reconstructed according to his plan.
мне кажется,
It
что
seemed to me that he took revenge on his school with that project.
его можно назвать дискохабом на космическом корабле.
It could be called anything like a disco hub on a spaceship, a big path leading to your beloved girl, or an escaper from everything you don't want to do, but only not a school.
Но только не школой. Мне кажется, что он чаще, чем другие,
Weenie is one of those rare people who, I suspect, often visits his childhood.
превратила из него
I was extremely curious to learn what kind of a childhood has turned him into such an
про
adult.
ее маленький.
He told me about his grandmother, about her blue, small house, the doors of which were always open, and from which loud music was always heard.
Подолгу уходили по нашим этим горам, долго рассуждали о наших
We walked with him our mountains, discussing our project for a long time.
очень маленьких.
We talked about tiny, cozy construction forms. In the morning when he was due to leave, we were drinking wild pear vodka at breakfast, and I toasted Weenie to build his tallest building here.
Свое самое когда-либо высокое здание, которое
My toast left him dumbfounded.
Мой тост вызвал у него
After all the previous days that he had stayed with us, he told me that he would not forgive me if we planned to construct anything huge. I explained that we were at an altitude of 1,800 meters above the sea level, and he needed to design only a 3-meter high house for my toast to come true.
Я решил покопаться
I did some digging through the flavors and aromas, rhythms, and environment of my childhood that have formed my adult self.
которые- та среда и ритмы, которые сформировали меня, мою взрослость.
I was sure that the most delicious fried potatoes were those that my grandmother fried.
Картошка — это та, которую жарит моя бабушка.
It must be made in a black, charred frying pan, in large pieces and undercooked by half.
Кусочками и обязательно наполовину недожаренная.
She just was lazy.
Она просто была ленивая, моя бабушка.
I still visit my mother to eat pies 2 days after she makes them.
2 дня после того, как она их пожарит. Дело в том, что
Because my school was the farthest in the town where I was born, and they brought there what was not sold in other schools.
туда привозили те продукты, которые не продавались в других школах. Вот
This is why I still like pies from 2 days ago.
давности. Я не хочу с вами делиться,
And I will not be telling you about the music I used to listen to in my childhood years.
формировали мой музыкальный вкус. Когда мы приняли решение, наверняка вы уже видели,
When we recently decided that we would stop heating houses with these cute manure bricks, I realized that this way I am depriving myself of the smell of my childhood.
этим я лишаю себя запаха детства.
It turned out that not everything which seemed wonderful in my childhood was really wonderful.
Замечательно на самом деле. И когда моя супруга
Once my wife entrusted me with our youngest son and flew away with our 3 older children. So, deciding to instill in my youngest son the right tastes at all costs, I played Comatas and Chopin's piano concerto for him, before sending him to school.
Шопена просмотрели практически всего детского.
We watched all of Chaplin's films together.
Он кушал
He had breakfast from the best varieties of cereals that grow in our mountains.
злаками каши.
And as a reward, what would you think I gave him to take with him to
С
school?
собой сухофрукты
Dried fruits and sugar-free cookies that we make within our project.
и,
Completely organic.
которые мы придумали в нашем проекте. Но самое главное,
But what's more important is that during those days, me and my son were in no hurry.
дни не спешили, потому что
Because I remembered my grandmother turning every meal I had into a world championship in terms of volume and speed.
она все время мне вторила, вот если ты не доешь эту
She
тарелку,
kept repeating that if I could not eat everything and clean my plate in 10 seconds, I would have an ugly wife when I grew up.
то когда ты вырастешь, у тебя жена будет некрасивой. У меня
I have the most beautiful wife now, but the childhood habit of cleaning not only the plate, but also every dish on the table, has remained to this day.
не только вычищать тарелку, но и вычищать весь стол. Я до сих пор не могу освободиться. Вы видите?
As you can see, so please, don't film me from the side. Every morning, on my way to work, I cross a wide street with a green traffic light for only 14 seconds. And if you cannot cross it using the technique of race walking, you risk getting hit by a car. So, when I leave the house, this traffic light determines my pace for this whole journey and for the whole day. I can even say, I go to bed terrified of the upcoming pace. The rhythm with which our children are born is fantastic. It could help transform the era of consumers and absorbers into an era of creators. And we need to help them grow up to remain in harmony with this rhythm. It seems to us that we inject the senses of responsibility, punctuality, but we only instill vanity and haste in them. The world around us is three-dimensional, and in three-dimensionality there is no competition, no greedy absorption, nor shamelessness that is happening around us. No running after time. Everything significant and important in our history was created unhurriedly. Can you imagine what that Chinese person thought when he laid the first stone of the Great Wall of China? Can you imagine if he turned to PWH or KPMG to calculate the economic effect of this business project, stretching through 2,500 years? Auguste Rodin received a government order and sculpted his Gates of Hell for 37 years and never completed his work. There was something to do with Dante's Divine Comedy. Nowadays, Rodin would be on the run or in prison, because the competition documentation would have included the column, to complete the work by the 615th anniversary of Dante. That is, to finish everything in the same year in which he started everything. Either he would be in prison, or it would be a prefabricated gate that would remain unknown for any of us. This sculptor was in no hurry. He studied poorly at school, he applied to Art Academy 3 years in a row. Simply because his dad did not have time to impose timing on him as a child. Now, not only children, but also vegetables and animals are forced to grow quickly or intensively as they call it. It seems to me that we are cunning. I would say, we are lying when we say that we do everything for the sake of children, that, practically, we live for them. This is far from being the case. In Nadine Labaki's film Capernaum, a child sues his parents for having him. A cruel movie.
Добрые фильмы, смешные. Но это кино буду просить вас посмотреть.
I love light, kind and funny films, but I will ask you to watch this movie.
Потому что нам всем, безвозвратно повзрослевшим,
We all, who have matured irrevocably, need to very carefully examine attitudes and worldviews with which our children are born,
с которыми рождаются наши дети, и перестать их
and stop forcing them to follow our deformed desires. And at that moment, maybe, the world will be filled with these cozy houses looking up to the skies, with self-fulfilled people living in them. And our wooden horses will turn into dark blue horses with a white mark on its forehead. Delightful as the whole wide world.